Next toolbar we're going to take a look at is called the View toolbar. It's at the top to the right of the standard toolbar. And the very first tool we see is called Fly Mode. And in order to really get an idea what fly mode does, we're going to need to put a hole in our part so we have something to fly through. So let's make a modification to our solid. Now this solid was created from a sketch, and if we go in and modify the original sketch by putting a circle on the sketch, we will end up with a hole in the part. So let's take a look at how we do that. Over here we have the tree, and we have a plus sign next to part body. A part body is the container for the features that you create. Let's select the plus sign, and we see that we've created a pad, and that pad was created from sketch 1, and then we have a couple of edge fillets that we've added here. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to go into sketch 1 and make a modification. Now we can't see sketch 1 because when you create a pad or a pocket from a sketch, the sketch is automatically put into hiding, and we'll get into what hiding is in a little bit. How I can tell that a feature is in hiding is the way the icon looks. If you take a look at the pad 1 icon, it's nice and bright and you can see it easily. If you take a look right below that at sketch 1, if you look at the icon, it kind of looks shaded. And that shaded image over the icon indicates that that is in hiding. Now we can bring it out of hiding, which we'll show you how to do in a little bit. However, we don't really have to do that in order to make the modification we want to make. I'm simply going to double click on sketch 1, and it's going to put me back into Sketcher right where I was at when I created that part. Now what I want to do is I just want to create a simple circle. And so to do that, I'm going to come over to the circle tool, and I'm just going to find anywhere here. Now where I click is going to be the center point of the circle. So I'm just going to click here, left mouse button, click, release the mouse button, pull, and click again, and a circle's created. Now later we're going to be talking about how you go about constraining this so that that circle would have a specific size and location and so on and so forth. But for the demonstration that we're doing right now, that's not necessary. So now to exit Sketcher back into 3D, I'm going to come up here to where it says Exit Workbench. I'm going to select that. Now you need to notice that the part flashed red for just a second. That was the part being updated. So now you'll see that the part has a hole in it. The part has a hole in it simply because we added that circle in the sketch. Alright, at this point let's take a look at how we might fly through the part. So I'm going to come up here, again it says fly mode, and this is the icon right there that we're going to be working with. I'm going to select that, and it says the fly mode is available only in perspective projection. Change to the perspective projection, and it gives me a choice of yes or no. There's two ways to view a Catia model. One is parallel, which is the way that when you worked with previous versions of Catia, like version 4, you only had one choice, and that was parallel. Version 5 has the ability to do perspective projection, and that's with vanishing lines. So we're going to select yes, and it's automatically going to change. I mean, you notice that the image has changed now. And let's take a look up here. This now says examine mode. We have fit all in, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. We have turn head. Let's just see what that does. I'm going to click on turn head with my left mouse button. Then I'm going to place my cursor kind of in the middle of the screen here, depress my left mouse button, and move the mouse. And in essence what I'm doing is I'm viewing the object as though I'm moving my head left and right, up and down. The minute I release the mouse button, the icon or the tool releases. Now next to that is fly mode. Next to that is accelerate and decelerate. Now you'll want to kind of play around with these because by default I think it wants to accelerate pretty quickly. So let's click on decelerate a little bit here, a couple of times, 3 or 4 times. Now let's click on fly mode, put my cursor down in the area where I want to fly, depress my left mouse button, and now I'm flying. Now my rate of speed is at 0.11, and that's pretty slow. So let's let go of this now. Let's go up to accelerate, click that a couple of times, and then click on fly mode again. Depress my left mouse button, and now I'm flying through the part. Let's increase the acceleration a little bit more, and let's try it again. Whoops, click on the fly mode icon, and there we go. Now if you want to do a turn, you just move your mouse button to the left or right. If you want to do a bank turn, you hold the shift key down and then move your mouse left or right. and now we're flying through the part. We can do a loop-to-loop by pulling all the way up on it, and then we'll fly back through the hole again. So that's kind of neat. Okay, now I'm going to select this yellow box with the 4 arrows, and it's called Fit All In. And when I do that, it's just going to shrink my image down so that everything fits on the screen. Now, to turn fly mode off, we're going to select examine mode, and then my view toolbar goes back to the way it was. You'll notice now that we've turned the normal view toolbar back on, turning fly mode off, that we still have a fit all in. And again, what that does is, let's pan, let's just say our image is off the screen. If we select fit all in, it's going to center it on the screen, and if we have it zoomed up like that and select fit all in, it's going to zoom it down. And if we have it down, zoom down already, if we select fit all in, it's going to zoom it up. Alright, next to that is pan. When you select pan, basically it just moves the image around on the screen. Now it's not moving it relative to space, it's moving it relative, again, it's kind of like our turning our head up and down or sideways, similar to turning head in the fly mode. Alright, the next one is called rotate, and it's very useful to be able to rotate your part. I'm going to select the rotate tool. I'm going to put my cursor over to the right of the part. I'm going to depress my left mouse button, and I'll drag back towards the center, and you'll notice that the part rotates from right to left. When I let go of the left mouse button, the icon or the tool turns off. I'm going to select it again. This time I'm going to put my cursor to the left of the part and drag to the right, and you'll notice that it rotates from left to right. Now it's very useful to know how to recenter that sphere. So let's say, for example, that I want to center my rotation on this point right here. Okay. All I need to do is put my cursor over the point, depress my middle mouse button, and release it. And you'll notice that that point now has jumped to the center of the screen, and if I do a rotate, I am rotating about that point. Let's try that again. I don't have to be on a point, I can just be on any place on the part. Let's just select right here, for example, depress my middle mouse button without moving the mouse. I'm not moving the mouse is perfectly still, I'm just depressing the middle mouse button, releasing it. Now that point that I had my mouse over has jumped to the center of the screen, and if I rotate, I'm rotating about that point. Now to zoom in, you select the magnifying glass with the plus sign. To zoom out, you select the magnifying glass with the minus sign. Many of you are used to using a space ball when you're working with a CAD system, and Catia V5 has some spaceball functionality built right into the mouse. For example, we use the pan tool here in the view toolbar to pan. When I release the mouse button, it lets go. I can also use the middle mouse button to do the same thing. I depress the middle mouse button, I move the mouse, and I'm panning. Okay. Rotate I can do also. If I select the tool and rotate, it's wherever I put my cursor. I depress it and I move it, and I'm rotating. I can also do this with the mouse. If I depress the middle mouse button, and while holding it down, depress either the right or left mouse button, I'm rotating. So that functionality is built right into the mouse without having to go select the rotate tool in the view toolbar. Let's try that again. I'm going to put my cursor to the left of the part, I'm going to hold my middle mouse button down, then I'm going to depress my right or left mouse button, and then move the mouse, and I'm rotating. I can also zoom in and out using the mouse by depressing the middle mouse button, continuing to hold it down, and then click and release either the right or left mouse button. Now remember, I'm continuing to hold the middle mouse button down. Again, hold the middle mouse button down, continue to hold it down while you click and release the left or right mouse button, and then move the mouse up and down. If you move it up, you zoom in. If you move it down, you zoom out. Now, in my class, we all use a 4-button mouse, which means there's a thumb button. And if you have a thumb button that you're using at home, you can use the software that come with the thumb button, the driver software that came with the thumb button or the 4-button mouse, and you can program the thumb button to act as the middle mouse button. And I find that to be easier than using the middle mouse button because you're depressing the buttons in conjunction with each other to get it to rotate and zoom in and out. So right now I'm going to zoom out by depressing my thumb button and then clicking and releasing the first or third mouse button. And this I'm doing with the thumb button now. I'll do a rotate now by depressing the thumb button and then depressing the first or third mouse button, holding both of them down, and then do a rotate. I just happen to find this a little bit easier to do than trying to push the buttons on top of the mouse. So if you happen to have a 4-button mouse that you're using, go ahead into the software that came with that 4-button mouse and program the thumb button to be the middle mouse button, and you can do this as well. The next tool I want to discuss is called Normal View. And what Normal View will do is if I select Normal View and I select a face, the part will rotate around so that I'm looking normal or 90 degrees to the face that I've selected. If I select Normal View again and I select an edge like this tangent line, I'm now looking down that tangent line. I'm looking down the point view of the tangent line. So that's quite handy. And you're not limited to just selecting lines and faces or planar faces. You can select Normal View and I can select this arc. And what it'll do, it will look down an imaginary line that's tangent to that arc at the precise point that I'm selecting it, like that. I'm not sure how useful that would be in the real world, but it will do that. Now I happen to notice that we still have projection mode turned on, and I'm going to go back to parallel mode. And to do that, I'm going to come up here and select View. And I'm going to come down to Render Style, and I'm going to select Parallel. Now my own personal preference is that when I'm working as doing design work, I prefer to look at it in parallel, probably because I started in version 2 Catia and 3 and then 4, and I used that for years, and the only way to view the model was in parallel mode. And so I'm a little more comfortable with that. Perhaps you'll be more comfortable working in perspective mode. So alright, let's continue on. The next tool that we have, which I think is new in version 14, it's called Create Multi-View. And we're going to select that. And what it does is it divides the screen now into 4 different views. And you can manipulate each view, rotate, pan, and zoom, merely by placing your cursor in that quadrant. Now where this can be really useful is if you're working on a very large project. Let's say that you're working on an airplane and there's a feature like a fillet that you want to be able to copy at the front of the airplane and paste it at the back of the airplane. What you can do is, for example, let's say that this is the front of the airplane. You can zoom in on this area here, and then let's say this edge is the back of the airplane. You can zoom in on this particular area. I can drag and drop. I can grab this fillet. I'm going to hold the control key down so I'm in copy mode, and I can drag it onto this edge, and it will actually copy and paste that edge. Now we're working with a very small part here, but imagine if you're working on a larger scale like an airplane where you wanted to grab that fillet at the front of the airplane, you could drag it to the back of the airplane. If you didn't have the ability to do this multi-view, you would end up having to scroll or pan to the front of the airplane, copy the fillet, pan all the way back to the back of the airplane, and paste it. And that would be very cumbersome to do, especially if you had to do a lot of them. So this multi-view comes in very handy. The next tool I want to discuss are the predefined views. Catia has some views automatically predefined. The top tool is called isometric view. When I select that, it gives me an isometric view. The next one is front view. Now what you might notice here is that the orientation now of the axes, the Y is pointing to the right and the Z is pointing up. That would actually be traditionally a rear view, not a front view. And I assume that it's backwards because the software is written by the French, and I believe they're using more of a instead of a third angle projection, they're using first angle projection. So I believe that's why the disparity between how we would normally be looking at the axes for a front view versus how they look at it. And there is a way to change that now. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Then we have back view, left view, right view, top view, bottom view, and then we have named views. I'm going to select named views, and so you can click on, for example, the front, and you can reverse it like that, or you can go into properties now. This is something fairly new, I believe in release 14, and you can actually define the orientation. Prior to release 14, you were stuck with the French's orientation for what a rear view or a front view was. Now you can actually go in and modify that using this. I'm not going to do it, but just I wanted you to be aware that you could do it if you wanted to. And let's close this for just a second. Now let's say, for example, that I need to be able to get back to a specific view repeatedly, and the view that I need to get back to is not one of the standard front, top, back isometric views. So let's just go ahead and rotate our part. Let's say that this is the view that I need to get back to quite often for whatever reason. What I can do is I can click on named views up here. I can click on add, and it wants to call them cameras. Everything in Catia v5 when it comes to views and renderings and things like that are about camera angles. So this is called camera 1. I can actually rename this if I want to. Let's say maybe put my initials in, KDC1, and then apply it, and then select OK. So now that's been saved as a named view. So if I click on this again, there it is. So let's assume now that I'm doing some work, and I've got this rotated around, and let's just even put it off the screen here a little bit. Now we come back up here to named views, we click on KDC1, we click on apply, and OK, and now we're right back to where we were when we recorded that camera angle. So that's a very handy feature to have. The next set of tools that we're going to look at is visualization modes. This has to do with shading and wireframe and things like that. So we're going to click the black arrow, and you see that there's several tools here. We have shading, shading with edges without smooth edges, shading with edges and hidden edges, shading with material, wireframe only, and then custom view parameterization or parameters. So let's just take a look at shading first. If I turn on just shading, you'll see that the part is shaded and it's not showing any of the edge values, tangent lines, or anything like that. Now let's move down to the next one, which is shading with edges. And you'll get to see that you see not only the shaded part, but you also see that the tangent lines, and if there were any edges on the part, well, there is an edge here where the circle is, those are highlighted in black. Now let's go down to one that's called shading with edges without smooth edges. And what that means is that where you have a hard edge, it's going to show you the black line, but where you have a smooth edge like this tangent, see, it's not going to show you the line. The next one is shading with edges and hidden edges. Now this is very handy because it you get to see where the hidden lines are. The next one is material, shading with material, and it's not going to show you anything right now because I haven't applied a material yet, but I'm going to apply a material in a few minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look at this one. And then there's just wireframe. Now the part is still solid, but it's just showing you the wireframe representation of the part. And then we have one that's called custom view parameters, and if I select that, I get this custom view mode dialog box up, and then I can actually choose what I want to see. Lots of different choices here. And this is something you just want to get in and play around with and get familiar with over time. Let's go back to shading. And we'll say OK to that. Now there's also another handy feature built into Catia V5. Sometimes, now on a small part like this, if I needed to select a back face, I would simply just rotate around and select the back face. But sometimes when you're dealing with a large part, it's not so easy to rotate it around and select the back of the part. So let's say that I had a need to select the back face of this part. What I can do is put my cursor over the front face and then hit the up arrow key on the keyboard, and it will select through the part. And wherever it sees a face, wherever it's coming in contact with a face, wherever the cursor's at, you can select that face. Like for example, I can select that back fillet right now. If I select the up arrow key or down arrow key on the keyboard again, it's going to give me another selection. That's the front face. And then that's selecting actually behind the part. I'm not sure how useful that is. You also have a list here that comes up. This is something they've added in release 14, that it's telling you exactly from where your cursor was at. It's telling you what is in alignment with your cursor. In other words, what's behind the face you're selecting. So if I wanted to select that fillet, I could come down here and select that. Now the fillet's selected. So that's handy. Okay, the next tool we're going to talk about is HideShow. And HideShow, there's a visualization. It used to be called Show and No Show in Catia version 4. Here they call it HideShow, which is really a little bit more descriptive. And basically it's like applying an invisible filter to a part. Let's come up here and select part body in the tree, and then I'm going to select HideShow, and you'll see that the part body has now disappeared. And the icon next to part body has been replaced with this little shaded icon indicating that that is hidden. Sketch 1 is hidden here. If I click on Sketch 1 in the tree and I select Hide Show, well, it would bring Sketch 1 out of hiding if the part body is not hidden. There we go. See, Sketch 1 is now shown. If I click on Sketch 1 in the tree again and I select Hide Show, it hides Sketch 1. If you select part body and select Hide Show, it hides the part body. If I select it again and select Hide Show, there we go. Now, you can actually go into the environment where these parts are being put in the hiding environment. So if I select part body and select Hide Show, I can actually come over here and select Swap Visible Space, the icon next to Swap or Hide Show, and you'll notice that the background is now turned to a pale green, and we see the part body and the sketch. And so sometimes it's handy when you have a lot of features in the tree and you have a sketch that you've created, but you don't quite remember what the name of the sketch was in the tree. It's very handy to come into this hide environment and be able to take the sketch out, for example. So for example, let's say I wanted to take the sketch out. I would select it and then select Hide Show. I actually have to take the part body out too. There we go. And then I can select Swap Visible Space again, and there you have it. You'll see the sketch and you see the part body. Now, having said that, I very rarely use the Hide Show tool because I can actually right click on the part body, for example, and there's Hide Show in the contextual menu right here. And to me that's a little bit easier to use the contextual menu to use the buttons on top. It's a little less mouse movement. Right click again, select Hide Show. But if you wanted to be able to look into the environment where you put things when you hide them, you have to select the Swap Visible Space. There's nothing in there right now. So I'm going to right click on the sketch and I'm going to hide that, and now we're back where we started. Okay, the next tool that I wish to discuss is called Measure Between. And this is going to allow me to measure distances typically between, or angles between elements or faces or what have you. So let's select Measure Between, and you get the Measure Between dialog box up, and let's see here, it's set to Measure Between right now, and you have some filters that you can apply. Selection Mode 1, Selection Mode 2. Let's go to Any Geometry and Any Geometry, and I'm going to select this face and then this face. And what it tells me is that I have a 90-degree angle between them. It shows me the minimum distance between the faces. Lots of other information here as well. But the reason that you have selection mode 1 and selection mode 2, let's say for example I wanted to measure the center of the circle to this face. So I'm going to select arc center, and then let's go any geometry infinite. Now I'm going to select this circle, and it's taking the center of the circle, and I'll select this face. And now it tells me that the distance between the center of the circle and that face is 72.69. So being able to define what you're going to select from these menus can be very helpful. Again, this is something that you want to get in and play around with a little bit to get the feel for it. So we're going to select OK. The next tool that we're going to use is called Measure Item. I'm going to select that, and this allows me to, for example, if I select this face, it tells me that it's a planar face, and it tells me the surface area of the face. I can select this radius, and it tells me what the size of the radius here, and it also tells me the surface area. I'm going to select this circle. It tells me the radius of the circle. It tells me where the center point is located. You also have a selection mode 1 here, so you've got some things that you can choose. Let's say point only, and then select this. I guess you have to select just a point. There we go. So you can refine what you're going to select by selecting, choosing things from the selection mode drop-down menu. So let's say OK to that. The next one is called Measure Inertia. I'm going to select that and then select the part body. And it tells me things like volume, area, mass. It allows me to key in a density. It tells me where the center line of gravity is located, things like that. I also have an opportunity to create geometry or export or customize. If we select customize, you can actually change what's going to be displayed in the results window. We're going to cancel that. Cancel that. And the last tool I want to discuss when it comes to visualization is called Apply Material. Catia V5 has a material catalog built into it. I'm going to select that. And the material catalog pops up, and I'm going to kind of condense this a little bit. And let's go down to, here's wall of bricks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this with my left mouse button. I'm going to select it and drag it onto my part like that. And then I'll select OK or close this window. Now you'll notice in the tree it now says wall of bricks, and at the bottom of the tree it now says material. Now it doesn't look like a wall of bricks right now, and that's because I need to turn on my shading with material. So I'm going to come up here to my visualization tool. I'm going to come down here to the one that says shading with material, and there you have it. Now I can actually customize the wall of bricks because I've got a fairly small part, and so the bricks are really large. I'm going to right click on wall of bricks. I'm going to find properties. And where it says material size, instead of being 400 millimeters, I'm going to make it 40. And then select OK. And now my wall of bricks are much smaller. Each brick is much smaller, but it looks more appropriate to my part. Like that. Now, not only is this kind of a neat thing to look at, but it also has a very functional purpose. Catia V5, if you have the right license, has structural analysis capabilities built into it. And if you're going to do structural analysis, you have to supply a material that you're using. And the material from the library, for example, if I wanted to do a structural analysis of this wall that I've created with these bricks, when I went into the structural analysis workbench, it would use these bricks to do the analysis. So I wouldn't have to punch in a bunch of information about the material. It's automatically going to use the material that I've applied to it. Now, if I select the Apply Material tool again, you see here that we have construction, fabrics, metal, other, painting, shape review, stone, and wood. What I assume is going to happen, I haven't seen this yet, but I assume that companies like Alcoa and DuPont that supply materials to the automotive and aerospace industries are probably going to have materials that they create that you can import into Catia v5. So eventually you'll see an Alcoa tab here, and when you click on it, we'll have all of the different aluminum alloys that Alcoa offers, and you can select the one you want, drag it onto your part, and you will be working with the material that your part's really going to be made out of. So that's very handy. So I'm going to close this. Now if you want to get rid of the material, you can right click on it in the tree and select delete from the contextual menu. Now what you'll notice is that the material is at the bottom of the tree still. You can't get rid of that. Once you apply a material, that is going to say material. But we have removed the wall of bricks, so you do not have a material applied right now, despite the fact that it says material at the bottom of the tree. And that concludes the lecture regarding visualization and measurements.